At school, we played tennis and hockey. I hated hockey because I felt decidedly vulnerable, playing in the left wing position. The sight of girls racing towards me, clacking their sticks together, was horrible, as were their screams when the ball came in my direction. To whack it, Pen! Ooh, the smell of my hockey bag was earthy and musty. Our studded boots would hold a large amount of earth, and only occasionally did I get a knife out the drawer and chip away at it. I probably only had clean boots for the first game of the season. Oh, that's disgusting, isn't it? Sorry. My clothes were washed once or twice a term, as I just flung the bag in the corner when I came home, and it was forgotten until the next week. Oh my goodness, hockey, pick it up, off I'd go. Tennis was different. I enjoyed that very much, although I never felt I could play well. We played tennis over Groveland's Park and were expected to change into our tennis kit on the court, with anyone who was passing by eyeing us girls up. We hated it. We also went swimming once a week in the summer. We went to an outside pool which was freezing, Barrowell Green. It was pure torture. And as my period started when I was 11, I must have been the only girl on the planet to suffer every week. Usually the teacher forgot that I hadn't swum the week before, and I got away with it for weeks on end. In the end, she began to suspect, but was then told I'd forgotten my costume. I hardly ever went into the icy water of Barrowell Green. When my period started, it was a shock. I'd been waiting for it to happen, but when it did, the sight of blood made me reel. I went downstairs and told Mum. She said, "No school today, love. Pop back into bed and I'll bring you a cup of tea." That was my mum for you. Oh, how I miss her. I went back up the stairs and grappled with the thought that I'd started my periods. It's a shame to have this happen at 11. I lay there listening to the workmen banging away in the kitchen and thought things will never be the same. I was right in a way because I suffered a lot of pain and mentally things became difficult at that time of month. Periods weren't talked about then, hushed whispered to the men. And Mum asked me to keep my Tampax in my bedroom, not in the toilet, as Dad won't want to see a box of tampons when he goes in there. I want to say, blow, Dad. I was suffering. Diz talked me into learning ballroom dancing. On a Saturday morning, we'd go and learn the waltz and the quick step. She used to whisk me round and was rattled if I forgot the steps. And on the 19th of February 1962, I passed grade 2, but decided not to carry on. I think mainly because it took time away from my piano practice. I just like to sit on my own and practice the piano. I was quite happy with that, having to learn steps for dancing and her sort of pulling me round and shuffling if I got it wrong. No, it wasn't for me, but I enjoyed doing it, a little dancing phase. Diz did carry on, however, and I think she made the silver medal stage or maybe even gold. When I was at Jane's party one Christmas, her cousin asked me to dance. There was a grand piano, above which were hung differing sizes of shiny glass globes. So simple, but stunning. We were still making our own paper chains at home. Up on the Roof was being sung by Kenny Lynch. And as I was dancing in her beautiful lounge, with the first boy who had ever asked me, I was kissed. It took me completely by surprise. It's obviously came too early, but must have encouraged me along the path of the boys phase. As I've said before, one thing I did have was a great deal of friends at school. We all tended to get on well together. In the summer holidays, we went to see The Young Ones and Summer Holiday, starring Cliff Richard, and romance started to blossom in our minds, especially regarding Cliff, as he lived near to us in Cheshunt. I subscribed to pop magazines and cut out any pin-up photos of the Beatles and Rolling Stones. These were stuck on my bedroom walls, and some of them were life-size. The girls would come round and we'd chat and play records and imagine what we'd say to them if we could meet them. I did go and see the Beatles at the Finsbury Park Astoria for their Christmas show in 1963-64. We were very near the front, and I couldn't believe I was seeing them in real life. You couldn't, of course, hear them for the screaming. Dad came to collect us, and we were all crying in the back of the car. I was 14. It was an evening I shall never forget. Mum passed her driving test about this time, but was a very nervous driver and basically could only drive round the block. Yes, she couldn't do a right-hand turn against the traffic, so she just went down round the block and back home. Excellent. It meant she could get out and do her shopping. She'd go to the end of the road, turn left and park at the little parade of shops in Alderman's Hill. We had a greengrocer call each week with a horse-drawn van. The milkman supplied quite a lot, and there were a good butcher's and couple of grocers. One was a small shop in Palmer's Green called Sainsbury's, and the other was Cullen's, which was at the top of my road. Sainsbury's sold cheese, eggs, and ham, etc., from a glass-fronted counter which ran down either side of the shop. Any tinned or packet food you needed would be asked for. The grocer would turn round, look up and down his shelves, and then pop it onto the top of the glass shelf, rather like the cheese counter in Tesco's, except you did all your shopping like that. You then went to the butcher's for your meat and the greengrocer's for your veg. Shopping was done each week, and Toby's dog food would be bought fresh from the local pet shop. He had frozen horse meat, which we would buy in £1 blocks, cut up, and we'd throw it to him. It was like feeding the lions, and I hated the blood and the sight of the meat. After getting her provisions or giving them a list they would deliver later, Mum would then turn left again and head for home. Sometimes Mum ventured to Southgate, but it wasn't very often. However, even though she didn't go far, it meant she didn't have to travel by bus, and I think she had a sense of freedom, not being tied to the house. We never ate convenience food. Well, there wasn't any really. Mum would cook fish, or we'd have stuffed hearts, sausages, liver and bacon, or steak and kidney pie. I never really enjoyed meat, so it was probably only Sunday and Monday's dinner that I liked. Sundays were always roast, which of course is meat, but not quite the same as hearts or liver. This was served with Mum's Yorkshire pudding, and then for afters an apple pie or crumble. The next day we'd have cold meat and chips with peas or baked beans. Scrummy. In one respect, the family started to change. Mum and Dad started to go out quite a bit as Chris was growing up, and I started to go out more on my own as I was growing up too. They would go to the theatre, out for dinner with business colleagues, or would attend dinner and dances. Mum would pop upstairs to get ready and come down a different person. She wore the most beautiful evening dresses and I vowed I'd do the same when I grew up. One was black taffeta, embroidered with small red rosebuds. As she bent over and kissed me goodbye, or good night, I was in awe, listening to the rustle of the fabric and smelling the scent of evening in Paris. I'd seen the small bottle on her dressing table, dark blue with a small silver top. Sometimes I couldn't resist a small dab for myself. Dad also looked so handsome in his evening suit with its silky lapels. He started leaving me notes if he wanted me to babysit, which made me laugh when I came home and found them on the kitchen table. One of these read, "Penny, in view of the fact that you're our number one daughter and that you work so hard in the house and that you always look after Chris when we want to go out, and that if anything has to be bought from the shops, you are the first one to rush down, and that you're such a clever girl at school, and that you're doing so well at music, and that you always take Toby out for his walks, and that you would go without your pocket money if needed. You can go out Friday night," in block capitals. Then in small writing at the bottom of the page it read, "Please, may we go out Saturday night?" My going out consisted of catching the train from Palmer's Green Station to Grange Park to meet up with some school friends, or occasionally we'd go out to Bayford, the end of the line, and walk along the country lanes. Nothing as wonderful as theatre and dinner and dances. However, I thought, my time will come. But unfortunately it didn't, as the fashions were to change and people didn't wear such wonderful dresses. We sometimes would go to Wood Green shopping or go swimming. There were 3 open-air swimming pools close by, and we would take a packed lunch and spend the day there, sunbathing. The anticipation of getting changed and then stepping out into the swimming area was exciting. Usually there was a fountain and the water splashed and smelt heavily of chlorine. The noise was almost deafening. That was the only drawback for me. I don't like that din of people shouting and general mayhem. I loved sunbathing though, and went as brown as a berry. Holidays were spent at Mevagissey, and the tan topped up to perfection in the first 2 weeks of September. One year we went to Meva with Diz, Kate and Auntie Phyllis. We thought it dead boring to be thrust down in the sticks and wrenched away from London. We decided to use the time to recuperate and would sleep as much as we could, so when we went home we would be prepared for anything. I remember doing that. My dad saying, "What are you doing?" And I just said, "Sleeping. For 2 weeks, I want to sleep so that I'm recharged and full of beans when I go home." We would sit on the quay listening to Pick of the Pops with Alan Freeman, or enjoying ourselves posing on the beach. Well, I better leave it there. Time's ticking by, isn't it? Yeah, so I wanted to show you this. This is the Beatles Christmas show. There they are. Souvenir program. And I think it says inside what the date was. Finsbury Park Astoria, from Tuesday the 24th of December to Saturday the 11th of January 1964. Yeah, Billy J. Kramer, Rolf Harris, The Foremost, Cilla Black, Tommy Quickly and the Barron Knights. I thoroughly enjoyed it. What an evening. I'm so glad I went. I'm so glad I went. I love Billy J. Kramer. "I'll keep you satisfied," sings Billy, and 500,000 pot pickers seem to agree. the nation's most popular new singing star. Oh, so I wanted to show you that. And then I was talking about the dinner and dances my dad went to, and he was at the Stage Golfing Society at the Savoy Hotel, 18th of November 1962. And my dad being my dad, Bob Hope was there, and he got quite a lot of autographs, and he always said, would you write to Penny? And so they all say Penny with love, Bill Cotton, Robertson Hare, Ian Wallace, Paddy Roberts, Henry Cotton. But he asked Bob Hope to tea. I mean, Bob Hope coming for tea. I mean, come on. Anyway, so it says to Penny with regrets because he obviously couldn't come. But it was nice of Dad to ask him. I think that runs in the family too, asking people around for tea or people to come and stay. Genuine offers. But there we are, to Penny. With regrets, Bob Hope. I think that's quite a special one. And I've got this one, the Stage Golfing Society, 39th Annual Dinner, November the 15th, 1964. I'm glad I saved these. At the time, I just went, oh, that's what I meant when I said once I took my mum for granted. I just said, oh, I didn't appreciate what it was. How thrilled my dad must have been coming from his background and then, you know, saying that to Bob Hope. I've got all these autographs here. We didn't watch much television, perhaps Sunday night at the London Palladium and Dixon of Dock Green or Z-Cars, but definitely the Forsyte Saga. I remember Mum looking forward to each episode and wondering what would happen. As I said, I remember where I was when President Kennedy was shot. I was at home. I came into the lounge and Mum and Dad were watching the news and they were both shocked. I just didn't respond well to it at all, and I distinctly remember Dad telling me off. Children's Hour was quite short, and I only remember Blue Peter. I just don't remember too much else. We did have a family drama on Sunday afternoons, which we all enjoyed together, but I can't really remember what they were either. I know years ago it was, or years before I'm reading, it was Cabin in the Clearing. But I remember the music to that. I remember sitting on Dad's lap and watching it. But I just know there was this drama on a Sunday afternoon, but I don't remember what it was. I progressed from reading the children's newspaper, which was lovely. It was a beautiful, beautiful print, and it had all the important news in it. I then went on to get Bunty. Oh, I love Bunty. And then pop magazines. And then I started to enjoy really reading the books I wanted to read. Angel Pavement. I particularly remember Wilkie Collins, A Woman in White. I was just amazed that anybody could use words like that and make a story up. And I remember putting the book down and saying to Mum, wow. That was my first, real experience of, a good book. Angel Pavement as well. Thoroughly enjoyed it. J.B. Priestley. I didn't have many clothes apart from a pair of 3/4 plaid trousers and a skirt with 2 kick pleats in the front and back in a dog-tooth check, a silky blouse with ruffles down the front, and a pale blue, very fine corduroy shift dress. I would like any one of those items of clothing now, and I would wear it. Dad took me up to town, as we called London, to buy these, and I wore them in rotation. I love classical music, particularly piano music, Chopin. I just loved it. I just absolutely loved it. And I also love poetry. I enjoyed Shakespeare as well, and Anne took me to see a couple of performances. At home, Dad listened to Frank Sinatra, and I remember the radio being on quite a lot. We called it the wireless, though. Even in my diary of 1966, I said I listened to the wireless. My English literature teacher at school helped me enjoy the classics, drama and poetry, but particularly I enjoyed it because Dad used to read poems to me, sitting in the garden on a Sunday morning. I definitely had a love of the arts, but of course I didn't realise this. I just thought everybody felt like I did. One weekend I went to Stratford-on-Avon to see A Midsummer's Night's Dream with the school. We looked over Anne Hathaway's cottage and all things relating to Shakespeare, and then went to see the play. I was enthralled, and my love of the theatre grew. The school put on the play, but I remember being very embarrassed when I was given the part of a fairy. I wanted one of the leading roles. Didn't they think I was good enough? How silly. I thought being a fairy was too young a part and felt self-conscious. Did a member of the Royal Shakespeare Company feel like this? I don't think so. Halfway through the production, I did swap roles with Wendy, and I played Flute, who, in a play within the play, if you see what I mean, is the character Thisbe. The line I remember is Lysander's, where he says, "Proceed, moon." I still say that to this day if I want someone to carry on speaking, and they look at me as if I'm nuts. Don't they realise I'm quoting Shakespeare? I also had a part as Lady Mary in the Admiral Crichton, which I enjoyed playing, definitely requiring the acting skills. In 1962, the film The Music Man was released, and Dad would sing all the songs interspersed with songs from Carousel and Oklahoma. But top of the list was Stop the World, I Want to Get Off with Anthony Newley. This LP would play on our record player most weekends. The songs were about Evie, and of course Dad always sang them to Mum. She'd chase him round the kitchen with a tea towel, pretending to scold him, but secretly loving it, of course. It was a very happy time. We also listened to Round the Horn, and Mum and Dad would laugh their heads off. I never understood the jokes, though, and grew up always hating people telling me jokes for fear that I wouldn't get them. Two of my favourite artists of the time were Peter Sellers and Tom Lehrer. The words to Lehrer's songs were bizarre. For example, I hold your hand in mine, dear. I press it to my lips. I take a healthy bite from your dainty fingertips. The night you died, I cut it off. I really don't know why. For every time I kiss it, I get bloodstains on my tie. How bizarre is that? But there's something about it. Dad played them all the time. I learned the words off by heart just through listening to them playing. And I still enjoy them now, and can picture Mum cooking Sunday lunch and Dad having to mash and carve, which was always tricky after a pre-lunch drink. One year, Mum and Dad said we were going away with a family Dad worked with. They had 5 children and, as Mum says, were top drawer. I knew them quite well, as when I was younger, Dad had helped his friend David to build a swimming pool in the garden. They lived at Norwood, and the house and garden certainly were gorgeous. Honestly, absolutely gorgeous. I have photos of me playing there, and if we were not playing with water, we were playing the railway children. The part of the garden near the house was formal. Then down some steps to a part where the swimming pool was being built, and onto tennis courts and wild parts, certainly a place for imaginative adventures. I wonder if it's a housing estate today. Back to the holiday, and the surprise to me was that we were going to Saint-Gulf near Saint-Tropez in the south of France. Imagine, abroad. Well, I couldn't imagine it, as I didn't know anyone had been. Holidays in the 50s and 60s were taken at home. It wasn't until the late 60s that things started to change. David and Margaret often went and knew the ropes and invited Mum and Dad to go with them. The French Riviera in the summertime cannot be compared to Cornwall in September. I bought a pretty pink bikini edged with white broderie anglais, and we set off in our respective cars. I don't remember one thing of the journey, as Dad decided to drive down during the night, and I slept all the way. I do remember waking up, seeing sand, huge yachts, palm trees, and feeling heat that I'd never up until then experienced. We stayed in a large villa, and I slept on the ground floor. My bedroom opened straight onto the beach, which was private to the villa. Mum said they called me the mermaid, because every time they looked out of the window, I was sitting on a rock, surrounded by the clear Mediterranean Sea, brushing my hair. This was the first time I'd experienced hair of any length. I'd grown it into a long bob and was very proud of it, because my mum always kept it short. So yes, I was growing up and could decide how to have my hair. I think we went on a day trip somewhere, but other than that, my memories are of sunbathing and meeting up with the local boys. Jean-Hubert, Roland, Pierre, their names sounded so marvellous in the French accent. Roland gave me a red belt from his swimming trunks as a memento, and we arranged to write to each other. Somewhere in my distant memory, I can remember meeting him in London a few years later, but not being over enamoured. I thought the boy much cuter than the man. Sellers of the most divine nuts would walk along the beach, and we'd often buy small bags throughout the day. And of course, Ambre Solaire, my abiding memory, is the smell as I applied it to perfect my tan. The time rushed by so quickly, but the heat, sand, people, smells, and tastes stay with me. And so enters the phase of my life, which was definitely the boy stage. Normal, but wow, I kept up a pace. When I see what time I used to come home, I'm amazed. I remember thinking my mum and dad were restrictive, but that's just not so. I was very independent, going up to London to shop, using taxis, and generally when reading my diaries, I'm seeing a self-assured young lady, one who looked after her money. If I caught a taxi from Southgate Station home, I'd be asked to be dropped at number 75. This was because the meter would stop at 2 shillings. Another 3 houses, and it clicked to 2 and 6. The driver used to look surprised as he drove off, and I, having asked for number 75, walked into 85. The button I chose with Sonia for Chris was a small, pointy, 6-sided blacky-brown one with white spots on. I thought it most unusual, and I wondered why this represented Chris. It was very beautiful in its way, but at the same time, with the white point protruding, it seemed irritating somehow. Chris was only 7 at this time, and so I couldn't really share anything with him. He was too young. I would have liked to. He irritated me in the sense that any 7-year-old boy would, charging around, wanting to come with me wherever I went, and not giving me much peace. At the same time, I appreciated having him around. Dad was busy working at building up his business, and Mum helped him with the wages. School leaving age was 15 then, although most people stayed on to take their exams. I couldn't wait though. The thought of leaving school in 7 months was very appealing. After all, I was 15 in the August of the year 1964, which is the first diary I have. Yes, so the next part's entitled My Diary Years.